Our scripture reading this morning comes from Luke's Gospel in the 17th chapter, 11 through 19. On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus was going through the region between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered a village, 10 lepers approached him. Keeping their distance, they called out, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." When he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were made clean. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back. Praising God with a loud voice, he prostrated himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus asked, "Were not 10 made clean? But the other 9, where are they? Was none of them found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well." This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
It's that season in summer, just before the fall shows start back up, that Tim and Sammy and I like to watch together. And we've kind of watched all of the Netflix shows that come out all at once in the summer, and we're looking for things to watch on TV. And I started watching a series recently that's set in the 70s. And it brought back lots of memories. You know, the hairstyles and the clothing. But what grabbed me the most as I started watching the show was the cars. Those big old 70s land barges. I remember when my dad bought a LeSabre, Buick LeSabre. I think I was in the 3rd or 4th grade when he came home with it. And it was as big as my bedroom. You know, it was gigantic. And we would take trips to the beach every year together as a family. And it was so big that my sister and I could completely lie down. One of us on the seat and the other one in the floorboard. And be stretched way out. It had that much room in it. But you know how sisters are, or siblings are. It didn't matter how much space there was in that car. We found a way to bother each other, even in the back seat. It had that big hump in the middle of it. And her side was behind my mom, in the passenger seat, you know, behind my mother there. And my side was behind my dad. And we were small children in huge seats. But you know, there's just that space in the hump. There's that border in the middle. See, sisters pointing at each other. And we would creep our hands across the border line and bother each other with it. You're not supposed to cross over the border, you know. That's right. And so, you know, we would scream things out like, "Mom, make her stop touching me. Tell her she's on my side of the car." To which my father often just pulled the car over. And I won't tell you what happened after that. Sometimes we learned how to stay on our own side. But you know what? We like to draw lines. We like to make borders. Because borders define where we are. We're either here or we're there. And sometimes it feels safer, maybe, to have a border that we can declare. So that we can keep others on their appropriate side. Like my sister should stay on her side of the back seat. And how can you have us and them without having borders? Maybe you've seen shows where they depict, or maybe you even know somebody, where there's college roommates and one is really messy and the other one's really neat, and they just can't get along in their little college dormitory. So what do? They take tape, like duct tape, and they make a border down the middle of the room. This is your half of the room, and this is my half, and don't get your dirty clothes over on my clean side of the room. We make borders. Borders are necessary double yellow lines out in the street so that the northbound and the southbound traffic have a lane to travel in without merging into each other. But sometimes borders are not so clear or easy to define. It's true. And I think about adolescence. It's not just a straight line border, but more of this in-between space. You're not a kid anymore. You're not an adult yet. There's this in-betweenness called adolescence. Or maybe you know firsthand, some of you, that there is this in-between space of serious illness. And I have sat with people before in the hospital room or nursing home room or in their living rooms where they were so ill, and what they would say is, I'm not dead, but I'm not alive either. I'm not able to live. There's that in-betweenness. That strange kind of border. This is the kind of border that we find today in our passage where Jesus is. He's in between Samaria and Galilee, it says. Except that on a map, there's no region in between Samaria and Galilee. They are separated by a line. It's like as if we would say Jesus was traveling in that border region in between Alabama and Tennessee. Where is that? I mean, is that Hazel Green? No. Is it in Alabama? I thought about Ardmore. But you know what? There's even a line in Ardmore, right, Jenny? There's a line. You either live in Ardmore, Tennessee, or you live in Ardmore, Alabama, and your taxes are different. They go to different places. There are lines that are specific. So, Luke is writing this gospel, and this story. Is it just that Luke doesn't know about geography in land? I doubt it. I think there's probably a deeper point that he is trying to make here. There's a lot of in-between in this short story that we have before us this morning. Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. But it's not just that he's on his way to that location because that's where he's going to go visit someone. He's on his way to this place where he is going to be tried and crucified, and then he is going to be spending 3 days in an in-between place that turns out to change the entire world. The 10 lepers are in between. Their condition makes them unclean. They cannot touch others. Others cannot touch them. They have to keep a safe distance from anyone else. They are not dead, but they are also not allowed to fully live. It dawns on me that we spend a whole lot of time trying to teach people how to keep safe distances. Distances for borders that we think are dangerous. We know that there are dangers in the world, and so some would say that we spend too much time, or parents spend too much time these days wrapping their kids up in bubble wrap. Metaphorical bubble wrap around their kids so that they don't get hurt or even see any danger. I remember walking to school when I was in middle school. It was 2 miles to my school, and then 2 miles back home, and it was uphill both ways. Tim sometimes likes to say there was an uphill and a downhill. It was uphill both ways, but we walked to school, a group of kids. But I remember when Celia first got to the age where we lived 3 blocks away from the school in our neighborhood. And I really stressed over whether I should let her walk those 3 blocks in 5th grade by herself. Sometimes people put their kids into Ubers to go to school now. We've come a long way. We like to keep things safe, people safe, and the world is a dangerous place. There's a great book called 50 Dangerous Things That You Should Let Your Children Do. Somewhere along along the way, we've, taught our kids by not letting them do anything dangerous. We've taught them inadvertently not to be able to negotiate life, to navigate in life. So out of a desire to protect them, we've shielded them from every single thing. And this book that I found suggests that letting kids do some dangerous things will actually help them in the future. It will help them learn how to live in the world. Things like burning stuff with a magnifying glass. Who's done it? You should try it. You're not too old. We're all kids. Melt glass. I've never done that. I want to try that one. Put strange stuff in the microwave. Some people have done that on accident instead of on purpose. Take the toaster apart and try to put it back together again. Ride public transit just so you'll know how to do it. And my favorite, take a trip to the dump. Take a trip to the dump. That's where I loved to go when I was a kid. My grandfather used to take us out to the city dump. And let me tell you, it's an amazing borderland out there at the dump. We found amazing treasures. I found a slinky out at the dump one time in Jasper with my grandparents that I had for years. It had a little kink in one of the coils, but it wasn't broken. It was fine, and I played with it for a long time as a child. I think this book's premise is so true. It doesn't matter how hard we try to keep kids or people from danger or hardship in life, they will find their way there eventually. All of us, at some time or another, will find our way there, or maybe danger or hardship will come and find us. But one way or the other, we end up there sooner or later, in that in-between kind of space. Jesus seems to hang out in these in-between kind of spaces. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but read through all of the Gospels and you'll see that Jesus hangs out in these places that are considered dangerous or not okay to hang out in. Out in this in-between space, Jesus and his disciples are traveling, and a group of 10 lepers shouts out to them from their safe distance. Following their mandated protocol, they shout out, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." And what does Jesus do? He talks back to them. "Go," he says, "go and show yourselves to the priests." And they went on their way. And as they went, they were made well. You see, it would take priests to certify that they were clean again, that they could once again be entered into the rest of the community and be joined back in community. Until they had been certified clean, they were still unable to join fully with everyone else. They noticed that they were well. And one of them came back. He returned after noticing this, and what did he do? He threw himself down at Jesus' feet and gave thanks in a loud voice. It must have been, I don't know, like a gushing kind of scene that day with this man just laid out in front of Jesus, giving thanks beyond thanks beyond thanks. While the disciples looked on, maybe you've had the feeling of someone thanking you over and over again, and it got to the point where it felt a little embarrassing. Seems like maybe that's what this scene draws up. Then Jesus asks him, "Where are the other 9? Weren't 10 of you cleansed?" But only one came back to praise God. And it's kind of weird because Jesus didn't say, "Go and then come back," right? He just says, "Go and go and tell yourself, show yourself to the priest." And one comes back, but it seems like Jesus is saying, "Go. Why didn't you come back?" That's a question that gets asked a lot in this text, but I think there's a better question, maybe a deeper question. Why did this one come back? Why did he turn around? Well, one reason may be that he is a foreigner. He's a Samaritan. The others could go to the temple in Jerusalem and they could show themselves to the priest, but he was not a part of that community. So even if he was well in, he couldn't be made clean in that community. So maybe that's why he came back to Jesus. But didn't he have his own cultural, his own community's protocol to follow? Wasn't there someone else who could have certified him as clean? Why did he come back? All were given a second chance at new life. 9 did exactly what was expected of them. But one did something dangerous. He decided to live in gratitude. It's a danger sometimes to live in gratitude, to worship without restraint. And that is what makes him well. The word at the end of our reading, where Jesus says to him, "Get up and go on your way, your faith has made you well," that word is translated as whole, as saved. 9 were healed. 10 were healed, actually. But 1 was also saved, made whole. This short passage brings up a lot of questions on which we could spend our time, but today I am wondering, if given a second chance, what would you do? What is your response? Would you play it safe? Would you go on your way? Or would you stick with Jesus? Would you go back out there to that borderland, that in-between space, and live on the edge? Throw caution to the wind. I have a friend who has just been through terrible chemo treatments for cancer. And she got an excellent report. She's in full remission. And everyone expected her, this young woman in her 30s, to be so thankful that she would go on her way and just leave all of that behind, sitting in a room having chemo treatments for hours at a time. But you know what she chose to do? After she was given a clean bill of health, she chose to go back to that place where there was so much pain as a part of her diagnosis and her treatment. And she holds what she calls chemo parties for other people who are now going through what she went through. She holds their hands. She touches them with love and with an acceptance of someone who has been in the same position. You see, she's not just healed. Her gratitude has made her whole. But change can be scary, even when it is good change. It can be very scary. And so I wonder, is it any wonder that many of us, and I put myself in this place, that even when we are healed, we still have a tendency to play it safe, to hide in a safe place. It's what we've learned to do. We don't know what happened to those other 9 lepers. Presumably they were certified clean, but I imagine it was difficult for them to return to society because they had spent so long being untouched and untouchable. Sometimes our learned behavior keeps us from living as whole, even though we've been certified well or clean or free. Some of you may know the movie The Shawshank Redemption. It's an old movie, but a wonderful film and worth watching. It's about some men who spend life or a long period of life in prison, and one of the men named Brooks is finally released after spending more than half of his life in prison. And he finds that he just can't live free. He doesn't know how. It's too scary. But even in not so drastic ways, we see this kind of thing. There are college students who have waited all their lives to go off, to get free from mom and dad and live on their own. But what they find is that it's so scary they come back home and then they decide not to leave again. Because change, even when it's good, is difficult and scary. And let's not exclude the church from this kind of living. Churches are all too frequent in holding on to what we've got, our money or our building, and not letting go of it to be used in ministry. Afraid that some future will call it back into need, and so we hold on to it. A mentor of mine was pastoring a church. I may have told this story before. He was pastoring a disciples church in Georgia, and across from the church was the county high school. And they were having part of the school remodeled, and the choir wanted to come to their sanctuary every single day, 5 days a week, and practice as a choir. This is a church that had been praying for a revival of young people in the life of their congregation, and you know what they did? They said no. No, they got together in a meeting and said, those youth will destroy the building. They won't treat the sanctuary with enough respect. We have to guard this place. They had this amazing in-between place where they could have offered wonderful ministry. But they settled. They could have been made whole, but they settled for well enough. What do you do with a second chance? Maybe you're thinking, well, I've never had cancer or been an addict or been in prison or had anything really huge to overcome in my life. But the question I think this passage has me pondering today is, what difference does your relationship with Jesus Christ make in your life? What difference does it make in my life? Because you see, every single day we each wake up like we did this morning. And we have another chance, another opportunity. And you can decide, and I can decide, will I play it safe? Will I choose the safe road? Or will I just live for myself? Or will I turn around like that 10th leper did? Will I turn back and recognizing God's work in my life, will I decide to live in the kind of gratitude that makes me feel recklessly in love with Jesus and want to proclaim it and live in that kind of faith and invite others to do it as well? Will Willimon told the story once of a funeral that he went to. A man he knew died of an overdose, and he and his wife went to the funeral, and he complained after it was over, and he and his wife were driving home in their car. It was one of those evangelical type funerals. And he said, I could feel it coming the whole service. I could feel it coming. And the minister, sure enough, at the end of his sermon said, as we all pray and you bow your heads, I want you to know it's too late for Bubba, but what are you going to do? And he said to his wife, that's just so inappropriate. It's just the worst. And she looked at him and said, you know what the worst part is? That it's the truth. We are reminded by the poet Mary Oliver that each one of us has one wild and precious life. What do you plan to do with yours? And the 10th leper reminds us that the better part, the faithful part, the faithful choice is to throw caution to the wind, to turn around, to go back and to lay ourselves at the feet of Jesus in this in-between place. Because it's in our relationship with Jesus that we are made well. And it is in our gratitude that we are made whole, that we are saved. May it be so for us individually, and may it be so for us as a church. Amen.